Hello class. Um, just thought I'd make a few videos here to help you with getting started with the skeet. In this project we're going to start learning about inheritance, and so the idea with inheritance is that objects can inherit properties from other classes to help you so you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. And so we can base new classes based off of other classes that do similar things to what we want, and then we could just add a little more to them to make them unique. So if you were doing the milestone, it says at a minimum you should have the following. We'll start with number 1. You need a base class for the flying objects. Now, I'm assuming that you're going to plan this all out on paper with your UML and everything, but I just wanted to go over this, help you get started. A flying object we've already seen in our previous program. We had the moon lander, we had the lander object was a flying object. So we can take a lot of what we learned from that and make a simpler flying object based on what we learned from the lander. So I'm going to copy everything I have from my lander.h file, and in my skeet folder that I'm creating, I'm starting with all the files that we got from the server. I'm going to make a new file and call it flyingobject.h. And I'll paste that in. Now just be careful when you're copying and pasting. You make sure to change everything. You don't leave any old stuff in there. So first we'll get the we'll change the wording for the header, including definition stuff. Flying object H. Okay. Now we want to include the point class for sure, and we want to include the velocity class for sure. Probably with a simplified version of a flying object, we're not going to worry about fuel. That would be something that gets specified in an object that inherits from a flying object if you want to control, if you want to make a new lander or something from this. So the class now, instead of lander, I want it to be flying, let's do camel case object. Flying object. Okay. And inside our flying object, we have a few things that are good. We've got a point, we need a point, we need a velocity, and a flying object is dead or alive. Okay, the part that's specific for the moon lander, we won't use, the lander and the fuel. Okay, and I'm going to change the type to protected. When we start playing with inheritance and things, we want to keep things protected, not necessarily private, so that the different inherited objects can see each other's values without being restricted. So this is a different one. You should go read about the protected versus private. Okay, inside public, we need a constructor, but the constructor is going to be a lot more simplified. Flying object, it's not really going to do much. We're going to leave the constructor up to whatever object inherits from flying object. Okay. So we're expecting this object to get, we're not expecting this object to ever just like be a thing by itself. We're expecting another object to inherit from it and then create objects. And we'll eventually need a destructor, and it's going to be virtual. Making it virtual here means that it definitely needs to get implemented by a class that inherits it. All right, so the good things we want to keep about the flying object, for the flying object as opposed to the lander, we want the getter for point and velocity, that's good. Is alive will be good. Is landed, get fuel, no, we don't need that. We won't need set landed or set alive or set fuel. Anything about fuel. Okay. We need now these other ones, apply thrust, apply gravity. These were all specific to the moon lander. Okay. So after is alive, we do need to add a few more. We'll need a setter for the point and velocity as well. Okay, we'll have a constant address to a point object. Okay, so we can set a point by giving the setPoint function a reference to a point. And then we would just say, okay, this point would equal point. So I'm just going to define that here in line. Similar thing with velocity. We'll be able to set the velocity by giving it a velocity object. Reference to a velocity object, okay? Giving it a pointer. Change the velocity, if I can spell. Okay. And then we'll also, if we want the whole process of being alive and not alive, we'll also need a function to kill the object, and we can do this one in line as well. We'll just say, okay, alive equals false. And then it'll be dead. Okay. Advance is good, but we want to change this one just a little bit. We want to make it a virtual function so that it's required that any object that inherits from the flying object has to implement an advance function, as well as a, oops, wrong one. Thrust is gone. We need a draw function. Okay, and so this one is virtual. We'll just have it a default 0. Okay. All right, so hopefully that helps. We set up a flying object that we're going to be able to inherit. Semicolon, all right, everything looks good. We will use the flying object and we'll inherit, when we create the bird and the bullet, those are both going to be flying things, and so we'll inherit from flying objects, and we'll have the base functionality of a flying object.